Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's event. My name is Rachel Klein, and I will be your presenter here for the next 20 minutes. Today, we are talking about the report designer. Specifically in membership, a report designer does exist in donations and accounting and payroll, actually, and they function fairly similarly, but I want to go over just membership today to give you a few ideas or tips to be able to build a custom report and also customize a directory to get it to look exactly how you need it to look when you go to print it out. So this is it's not necessarily a part 4, but it still follows along with the different reporting topics that we've done so far this month. Part 1 talked about when running a report, how do you get the specific people that you need to see, right? So what criteria or what information do you put in on step 1 to get out the information that you want? Okay, so that was what we talked about in part 1, so that would be this first step. Also, the sort tab, super important. This sets the order that those people who fit your criteria are going to print out in on the report itself. Okay, I'm just going to hit next through this, and that's going to get us to step 2. So this is where we're really going to stay today. Step 2 has a lot of different reporting options. Part 2, we talked about basic and all information, and then part 3, which was yesterday, we talked about exporting in directories. But what I want to touch on today is this custom report option up here. This really allows you to build a specific report from scratch, okay? Most of the time you're not going to be using a report from scratch to build, but you can. I've seen people do it, although it doesn't happen very often. So if you choose custom and you hit new, I'm just going to call it name and age report, okay? A name and age report is going to be way easier to build using the basic columnar report, but you can build it if you wish using a custom report. The biggest difference with a custom report from scratch is it starts like this, okay? It is completely empty. Nothing is in here for you to work from. This allows you, like I said, to build it out the way that you want it. If this is something that you want to do, we can definitely help you with something like this. But for today's sake and the purposes of time, I'm going to show you how to edit or adjust a report that's already been set up as a template. Okay, I think that's going to serve us better from a learning standpoint. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to choose directory because I get a lot of calls on directory. And I'm going to choose one of our templates that we have down here at the bottom. And I'm going to show you how to use the report designer to customize this to fit your needs. Most people I talk to when they're wanting to customize a directory, it's because one of these templates here doesn't work or doesn't give them all the information that they need to see. Usually the information that they need to see along with name, address, and phone number are going to be their contact information. So their cell phones and their emails. Most people want that on the directory. Sometimes they want birth dates or status codes, which are all handled the same. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this template. And it's going to tell me here in a second that I need to go into the report designer to be able to customize this. So I'm just going to say, okay. And now I'm going to hit this edit button. And this is going to pull back up that report designer, okay? But as you can see, we have some information in here now. We have kind of a starting point to build from, all right? So a couple things I want to point out first. This is your report header. A report header, as it says, one band for a report means this is only going to print on the first page of your report, okay? Below here is the page header. Whatever you have in this section is going to print on every page of your report itself, okay? Organization name, organization city, organization state. These are default organization info fields. This information will be pulled directly from your sys information or your sys info that you put in when you first purchased the software. All right, that would have been done on the opening screen of Church Windows under Administration, System Information. Okay, so if you find you print a report and your church name spelled wrong, you're going to have to go in admin sysinfo and fix it there, okay? These fields down here, this is a date field. This is going to be the date that you printed the report. Church directory, this is simply an open text field. You could type in, add your church name here if you want. It's already going to be up here, or you can delete that. And then here is your page numbers as well. Okay. Something I want to point out to you too, when you have a field selected, if you look down in the lower left, it's going to give you, right next to this preview button, it's going to give you the information about that field specifically. Okay, so as you can see, I choose organization name. It tells me this is organization name 1. If I choose organization city, it's going to tell me down here, this is organization city 1. So this is your label, if you will, or how the software is built and defines the fields above. Okay. If you want to adjust these organization info fields, you're going to come over here to the lower right under data controls. This is your toolbox, and you can choose organization info field. If I click and hold on this and I drop it, it's going to ask me right off the bat, pick an organization information field. Okay, so I have to tell it what information about my organization do I need to see on that field. Say I want to include the phone number or the email. That's fine. I would simply choose that specific field, say OK, and now this field is set up to print that phone number from my system information tab. Okay. Pretty straightforward there. We also have some page information. So this is going to be information about the report or the pages of the report itself. Okay, that information is over here in your toolbox under data controls. If I drag this page information field over and I drop it, I can hit this little gear and I can adjust what page information is going to print in that page, in that field, excuse me, specifically. Okay, so this is going to be how the total number of pages. Do I want the date and time? Do I want to include the user who generated the report? Lots of options in here, okay? So that's your page information report. Now let's jump down here to this detail section. If you're looking here on the right, you can see there is this gray space here, okay? This gray space here tells us that this report is built of 2 columns. Here is column 1. Here is going to be where column 2 is going to print. You do not want to put anything over here in column 2 because you already have your information set to show up here in column 1. So it's going to take these fields and basically just duplicate them over here. So make sure you don't have anything hanging in here. You don't want anything overlapping this line. Now, however much space you give yourself between here and here, that's going to be how much space this section is going to have from the edge of this to the start of column 2. Okay? All right, so the details section. This is where most of your information is going to stay. All right, you have right up here last name. And remember, if you click on a field and you can't really see what it is, down here at the bottom, it's going to give you the name of that field as well. Last name, comma, preferred first name. So this is going to be for our primary person. And then we have our secondary person. We have names of our kiddos here. We have this special character field. So next to the include on directory checkbox, if you decide you want to put a character in there, that's where that field will pull from. Okay. Each of these fields is going to have a little gear next to it. You can also use this little gear to specify the label tasks. So right now, last name is going to print for the selected individual. Preferred name, this is set to selected individual as well. And then this is set to the spouse partner of the individual. Okay, so everyone in your database with a directory report order of number 1 is going to be considered your selected individual when you're working in the report designer. Anyone with a number 2 in their directory report order field is going to be the spouse or partner. Adults in the family, that's going to be your 1s and your 2s. Children, that's going to be anybody with a directory report order of 3. And then there's also the parents or adults of children field as well. That's going to look at 1s and 2s. Okay. If you need more information on directory report order, we talked about that back in part 1. You can check that out. But that's how those fields work, okay? Now, something else I want to point out too, some fields are in purple and some fields aren't. You can probably see that quite easily. The importance of the purple field up here, it's called a field connector. It's located right here. Let me make a little bit of room here. If I bring this field connector over, just click and hold and drop it, it allows me to put fields inside of the field connector, and then the software is smart enough to space things appropriately apart. So for example, up here at the top, I have last name, comma, preferred name, and sign. By putting all these different fields inside this one field connector, the program will space out between the words appropriately, okay? It will also keep everything tight and together, because if I were to have last name and then preferred name just simply down here next to each other, with it not being in a field connector, my box is limited to this size, okay? My preferred name box is limited to this size. Now, if I scooched it over here, last name, again, would be limited to this size, but then I'd have this huge gap between where my last name ends and my preferred name starts. That is why the field connectors are so important when you're linking more than one field together, okay? Also, undo button up here at the top. I use this thing all the time. Super handy. Make sure you check that out. If you make a mistake or something turns red because it's in the wrong spot, just hit the undo button. That'll get you back to where you started. Okay? All right, let's talk about membership fields next. So this directory, which I see probably being the most common one that our customers use, it includes last name information, kids' names like we discussed, their main address block, their phone number for their family. If they have an alternate address, this field is set up to print address from. It's going to list the address through and then the end, or it's going to list the start date and the end date, excuse me. It'll list the dates that they are at their alternate address if that was inputted at the time when their alternate address was put in. Here's where their alternate address is going to print, and then if they have an alternate phone, that will print there. Now that brings us down to these field connected fields. Okay, so as you can see, we have one field connector, and then we have one field inside the field connector, which just says the word cell, and it has this little person next to it. Okay, now we have another cell line, but down here we have a field connector that has a personalized label with email, and then a membership field for email for selected individual. Okay. I'm going to hit my preview button down here in the lower left so I can show you how these fields work specifically. Let's see if we have anybody actually has a cell phone, which of course we don't. All right, so let's look right here at Debbie and Bob Jones. As you can see, Debbie's name is printing next to the word cell, and then Bob Jones, his last name's included because it's different than Debbie's, is printing next to the word cell. This is what a personalized label does, okay? So if I jump back here with my designer button, this field right here is going to take the individual's name and add it in front of the word email. Okay, if I hit my little gear, you can see that the family member is selected individual. So that's going to print the primary person's first name and then the word email after. So this will say Bob's email, for example. This field down here is set to spouse partner. So this field is going to print the words Sally's email. Okay, so these personalized label add that name to the field itself so you know who the data is specifically for. Okay, now if we look over to the right, this is the field, it's called a membership field. This is the field that's actually going to print what the email address is. Okay, so this is the field that says Bob's email. This is the field that says bob@gmail.com. Okay, same thing down here. You have a second line because you need it for their spouse or partner as well. Okay, Now let's set up these cell phone fields because as you can see, cell phone is missing the membership field to print what the actual phone number is. So we're going to go over to the right down in our data controls and I'm going to grab a membership field and I'm going to click and hold. I'm going to drag it over and I'm going to drop it right in my field connector. As soon as I drop that field, I have to tell it what membership data do I want to print in that field. You have a lot of options. So if you find you want to show someone's birth date on the directory or the custom report, you want to show somebody's age, you want to show possibly their status code, maybe you have a deacon that you want to have listed on there as well. This membership field is where you are going to pull that information in, okay? But for now, I'm going to choose cell phone, say okay. And here's my cell phone field. I am going to stretch it out a little bit longer here. But as you can see, this is my second line, but it's defaulted to selected individual. I want this to be for spouse partner because I want to see what the spouse partner's cell phone is. I'm going to hit the gear under family member. I'm going down to spouse partner of individual. Okay. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to hit cell phone, hit my gear. Family member is already set up to spouse partner, so it knows to print Sally's name on that second line. But I want to come down here too. This omit if selected field is empty. What we're going to do with this is we're going to tell this layout that if Sally doesn't have a cell phone, I don't want this personalized label to print. So I don't want the report to say Sally's email and then have a blank space next to it. If Sally doesn't have an email, I want to omit this whole line. And that's what this omit if selected field is empty is going to do for us. So I'm going to choose cell phone for spouse partner. So if Sally doesn't have a cell phone, I want to omit the field that says Sally's cell. Okay? We're going to do the same thing up here on line 1. I'm going to grab another membership field, drag it over and drop it. Cell phone's already selected because that's what I chose last time, which is what I need. So I'm going to say okay. I'm going to stretch this field out, and by default it goes to selected individual, so I don't need to change that. Over here on the personalized label, I'm going to hit the little gear. My family member is set to selected individual. Perfect. But I'm going to tell it I want to omit it. So if Bob doesn't have a cell phone, I don't want to see Bob's cell followed by a big blank spot print. So I'm going to omit that field, that cell phone field. Okay. That's all set up correctly now. Down here at the bottom, this space you see here, this would be how much space you have between the next family below. So this is a pretty big gap. I'm going to hover over this blue line, click and hold, and I'm going to drag that up. Try to save some paper here, and I'm going to keep that pretty tight so then my next family will start after this much space. Okay. Down here below, you have your children's report. Obviously, we're not going to have time to get into that. I have about a minute left. This would be if you want to see specific information on kids. I don't see this utilized too terribly often, but I think I have a webinar on this out on the Resource Center. What you can do in this child section is you can actually go in and have kids information print. So if you want to see just the kids' ages, or you want to see just the kids' birthdays, or you want to see their school grade, that type of thing, you can use the children section to do that, and it'll actually list each kid out and then list the information you want to show. It works exactly the same as this field. It just knows it's specific to kids if you put it down in the children's report. Okay. You have footer information, a report footer, and a page footer as well. Don't normally see people use these. Maybe you want the page number down here. You could put that in the page footer if you wanted to, but mostly people leave it up here. Okay, I'm gonna hit save. Oh, one other thing I want to talk about before I leave, logo. If you want to add a church logo over here on the right, you just click and hold and drag that field over, drop it in here, hit the little gear, and then you browse where it says source. You hit the little browse button, and then you would browse to the photo that you want to have included. I've seen some really pretty directories with logos on it. One other thing I want to point out too, gosh, sorry, I forgot this as well. Font. If you find you want to change the font size, you want to change the font style, you want to bold, you want color, whatever that might be, all of that is done very similarly to Word up here at the top. The biggest thing to keep in mind when working in the report designer is each of these fields are its own text box. Okay, so that means if I click on this one field and I go up here and I change my font to something crazy, let's do this French script. It's only changing French script on the field that I have selected. Okay, so keep in mind that's how that works. You can hold down Control on your keyboard. This is what I do a lot, and it allows me to select multiple fields. And then I can go back up here to the font style and change it back to what I want. But keep in mind it's all its own entity. So if you find you want to make the font a little bit bigger, you're going to have to come through here and hold Control or one at a time, select all of your fields, and then change that font size. Okay. So it's a little bit different than just coming up here, changing it, and it changes it for everything. Because each field is its own entity, you are going to have to adjust the fonts for each field. Okay. All right, let's save this quickly. I'm just going to call it updated for now. And now back here on step 2, when I hit my print button, I will get my new directory layout that I made. All right, so here's a good example, Jen Arnold. Here's her son, Richard. Here's their name or their address, phone number. They got a place in Florida, and then Jen's cell and Jen's email. Okay. Keep in mind over here, Jonathan lives alone, so it doesn't repeat Jonathan's name in that personalized label. It just lists what is being labeled, which is nice, so it doesn't say Jonathan Fisher. Well, obviously this is Jonathan because we're on his block and he's the only one. So that is how you can use the report designer